Hello everyone, this is Shoes here, This Irish Life. Today I'm with you for a special called Buried Irish History, and we're going to take a look at some Irish history from the point of view of the Mudflood theory and the Tartaria theory, that there has been a civilization recently that has been destroyed in the last couple of hundred years, and that civilization is covered in a large layer of mud and dirt. That includes buildings, fields, walls, starforts like you're looking at there. And we're going to have a look at a section of Ireland called the Boyne Valley, and we're going to link in some mythology, and we're going to link in Starforts, and we're going to link in some river worship, and we're going to link in some Tartaria. So by Tartaria, I also mean potentially the Empire of Ross, to give it its correct name. Apparently Tartaria is just a section of the Empire of Ross. Thanks to Philip for that. Big shout out to Philip, who's one of the original inspirers of this discussion. So Philip Druginin, good man. I hope you're keeping well. It's really this whole theory has really come along since we spoke a couple of years ago. So if you ever get to hear this, big shout out, fair play to you. Keep up the great work. Anyway, I'm going to drive into this here. So I'm going to show you some Starforts so you can get an idea first of Starforts. We've got Romania here, quite a large Starfort. This one is in Portugal. They're often associated with water, so this one is covered in mud here. You can see all the dirt all over it. There's a little town in the middle, and there's water all through it here. This is it from above, and as you can see, it extends out into the fields around it. This one here is in Bellegarde in France, and it is a bit of a different design, but you can see there it's on top of a hill, and it's got that same star design. Here in Berwick in England, you don't see too many in England. We've got star shape here, all the star, all covered in grass now. It's covered in mud, obviously, below the grass. This one in Brest in Belarus, also all covered. You can see the shape here, and they've just left it all covered, and there's grass growing on it. There's a river running through it. This is common. You see the river seems to run through the Starfort, so it seems to be related to whatever a Starfort was, if they were the batteries, if it was a water-based current system, so generating, so like a hydroelectric type of scenario, but probably much higher level than basic hydroelectrics. But the water seems to have channeled through all of the Starforts, which existed everywhere, like literally everywhere. This one's in South Africa in Cape Town. You can see it here, just the outlines of it. Castle of Good Hope, 17th century castle, they say. This is Charles Fort in Kinsale. This is where myself and Doug, this is where we did our podcast. We have videos of us walking down along here, being up here. We started the podcast here. But this Starfort has completely got just mountains of dirt inside it, all up on top of it. It's on the sea. It's near Kinsale. Great spot altogether, but completely filled up with dirt to the max. It's not the only one in Kinsale either. I'll show you another one in a minute. This one's in Malaysia, apparently. As you can see, the outline, the four sides. Okay. Latvia's got loads of them. This is a buried one in Latvia, just covered up. These buildings just sitting in the middle of it. You often find cathedrals in the middle of them. Taiwan, you can see the outline there. Another star, just to show that they seem to be everywhere. This is a gigantic one in Portugal. Seems to be more sandy than dirt, but they've got trees growing everywhere. Like this hill, it looks like a hill, but this is probably a gigantic, like this is coming down here. I mean, if you look, just to zoom in a little bit, I mean, these probably go down. This could go down another level again. Like they literally planted these on top of hills. Whatever the hills were is another conversation. So, next one is in Fort George, Canada, covered in grass up on a hill, probably more underneath it. This one's in Scotland, very fancy design, seems to have pieces of it cut off. This is on a cliff, I think. Fort Independence in Boston. This is a very common shape, so remember this shape. Remember this shape. This is the most common that you see sitting on its own. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 1, 2, 3, 4 oftentimes. There's a four-sided one, just destroyed. Haiti. Haiti didn't do too well. Kenya, apparently. Starforts in Kenya. Lots of stuff in Kenya, lots of stuff in Africa. Africa was a much more developed civilization, we're led to believe. This one is just buried under the ground in Mexico. Fuerte San Miguel in Uruguay. It's a four-sided. Some buildings in the middle of it. Straight onto the bedrock. You can see the bedrock there. They literally just planked them on top. Starfort in Kinsale is onto the bedrock as well. Literally just planked on top of it. Sri Lanka, some stars. Sri Lanka 2, big circle. Japan, another one covered in dirt. Massive one in Haiti. I don't even know, it almost looks not real, but apparently it is. Apparently it exists. So yeah, that's a serious feat. Like that's tiny. Is that a car down there? This one is James Fort in Kinsale, and this is across the water from Charles Fort. This one is also covered in dirt, and you can see the larger outline of the second lower level. All of it covered, absolutely covered in dirt. This is Castellet or Castellet, 1685 etching, or apparently shows the city. This is Kinsale. So I showed you James Fort in Kinsale and Charles Fort in Kinsale. So this is there was a big battle in Kinsale in 1601 in Cork, close to where I'm from, and you can see the Starforts here. You can see one here. I've actually seen a better version of this map, but I don't know where it is. There's another one here. And this is Charles Fort up here. And James Fort is over here. This is the one I just showed you a minute ago. So this one here, James Fort, is here, totally covered. And this one over here is Charles Fort. You'll find it here now. That's the one. So that one's Charles Fort, and James Fort is over here, facing it. So you've got two Starforts facing each other in Kinsale, which is a small little port town in the south of Ireland. We're not going to be looking at the south of Ireland today. We're going to be looking at the Boyne Valley region, which is the east of Ireland, close to Dublin. which is an area where I used to live when I was younger. And it's the area of Ireland where the High Kings of Ireland used to sit. This one here, Latvia again, large star, all just covered in dirt, just covered in dirt. And obviously, you can tell at this stage, it's not small amounts of dirt, it's large amounts of dirt and soil and mud. So it's worth asking where it came from. You can see it's over this side of the river as well, so the river runs through it. So potentially this star could have even gone out further. We'll see an example, I think it's Palmanova or Nicosia, where there's just a gigantic star running around all the rivers, and it's all just connected into one intricate, beautiful design actually. Look at this one. Medina in Malta. Medina, I think that's a very important place as I remember. Kind of a section of a star. All of this doesn't seem to have any stars, but all the fields here. We'll see in a minute that all these sections in the fields, they're probably all very old walls. Montmedy in France. So once again, like it's just sitting on top here. Like this is a functioning town. What did they do? Wheelbarrow in all the mud and plop it up there to grow grass, you know? And obviously, this was put there, or did they, like, I mean, I suppose there's a chance that, no, sure, look, this is the top of a building. I mean, come on, like. This here, it's all just sitting on top. You know, it's inexplicable other than something happened, you know. Castellet again, we saw that earlier. Once again, on the water all running through it. I'm not sure in the original design, did they have water running in them or not? There's a potential that there was like a canal type of Venice set up, but maybe not. I think the water levels were actually much lower, which I'll discuss shortly. I don't think the water levels were as high as they are now at all when these structures were built, and that the way that water was controlled was quite different. I don't think any of this would have had water when they were built and used originally. So here's Nicosia. You can see that the river is running directly into the Star City. And you will see now on the next slide, like this is Nicosia, and you can see these gigantic stars pointing out all the way around the city. You've got your massive cathedral in the middle. See there's the cathedral. And the river runs through it and powers it almost. It's like, imagine the river as an electrical current. So the current of the river, imagine the electrical current and the ability to harness and create energy by just the flow of the river, but a much more controlled flow than we have nowadays. Nowadays, we don't really have mastery over the rivers. They're quite wild and they raise and fall. Before, I think there was a much better command of the rivers. This one's in Norway. The waterway coming through it was this much smaller waterway that then expanded. You know, that's what I'm thinking with these. Like this one looks like it was basically the water came through it and almost destroyed part of it. But I wonder, was there a part there the water did come through, but the water didn't come through at such a volume, if you know what I mean? Was there less volume there at the time? Because this one carries on over to the other side. Palmanova in Italy, and like you can see here, these are basically fields on top of it. I mean, it's completely unexplainable, other than a large amount of soil managed to be dumped on top of a large amount of masonry. You know, there's no other way to explain it. just is what it is. And it's clear that there's just dirt and mud and grass all over a gigantic structure made of thousands upon hundreds of thousands of tons of blocks that were apparently quarried from the natural rock, cut into square blocks and transported and placed into these structures by people who had no technology. I mean, it's farcical to flip and think that it was even possible to consider. These people were apparently barely able to feed themselves. Never mind. I mean, it's just not possible. We couldn't do it today. We couldn't do it then. All the labour in the world, it's just ridiculous. There's no evidence to support that it's possible, and there is a mountain of evidence to say why it's not. Um, Personally, I think most of these were built from some sort of a concrete or Roman concrete type of block that they cast, and that they had technology that was much more advanced than we can imagine today in order to build these structures. So, where are we? In Irish mythology. That's a little taster of later. Why is that one in there? Irish mythology. Fintan MacBuchra, the Wise, was a seer who accompanied Noah's granddaughter Cessair to Ireland before the deluge. Interesting. So when I'm discussing this, I am discussing it in my mind as considering that what I'm looking at from all the mud is possibly from this great flood, this deluge, because what it looks like is that there was a highly advanced mining civilization that existed all over the world as we know it, all over the continents or the countries that we recognise and the landscape, and that it was owned by different sections and different races almost. But those races were of a different breed to the current human race, which is a totally different evolution or devolution of that race. But those races that existed seem to have mined the land in order to create their world. So to create their buildings, they had to cut down all the trees. It looks like the trees were fairly gigantic, and there's also consideration to say that the people might have been much bigger as well. All of the people in myth and legend were said to be giants of different sizes, but there was also humans there as well, little people like us. But they've all disappeared. The giants have disappeared, and the gods and the titans. But when we're looking at the story of who built these structures, we have to consider that they were built by races of people that were much more advanced than we are today, possibly much bigger than we are today, because the buildings are all huge. You can see that by the doorways and just the general size of the buildings. They don't fit us. But all of that history looks like it would have happened in the times of pre-flood. So if you imagine they built the grand civilization, and then there was a cataclysm that dumped an awful lot of mud on everything. And it wasn't that long ago. It looks like it was like 500, 600, 700 years ago, something of that nature. So keep that in mind as we're going through it. This little tale here is about the landing in Ireland just before the flood. So I'm not sure who was here before they landed, but this is where the story of Ireland begins. That Noah's granddaughter Cessair fled here, and there was only 3 men, and one of the men was Fintan MacBuchra. He was the only survivor, and he was a shapeshifter, and he was able to shapeshift himself and live for, was it 5,500 years, and then he left in the year 5 AD when Ireland was converted to Christianity. and he's confused with the salmon of knowledge. So he turned himself into a salmon at some stage, but that was just to survive the flood. I think it says, yeah, his wife, they were drowned in the flood, but he survived in the form of a salmon, and then he turned into an eagle and a hawk and back to a human, and he lived for 5,500 years. But he's not the salmon of wisdom, which is a different story altogether, which we'll go into later. Spike Island, Cork Harbour, another Starfort. Plans of star cities in Ireland, 1759 to 1801. You can see the stars. This is Athlone. Athlone is a star city on the River Shannon. Galway is a star city. You can see it here. The resolution is shocking, but if I go in a little bit, you can see the stars. Galway. This is Charles Mount. Looks an awful like Charles Fort. Kinsale Harbour. This is Charles Fort, the one that we showed earlier. Londonderry. See this. You can see the stars here as well. Drogheda, which is we're going to talk about in a minute, and we're going to talk about the River Boyne and where it exits. We're going to be looking at this in a moment. But Drogheda is a star city. Dublin. I can't make out the stars in Dublin. The resolution's too bad, but you'd assume it was a gigantic star city because the rest of them are, and the rest of the cities all over the world are. Waterford has stars, and Belfast has stars as well. So there you go. Yeah, look, everything's a star and it's all buried and nobody's talking about it. These are just the same ones again, different resolution. Tilbury, England. That's pretty epic if that's Tilbury, England. You know, so imagine this, the water level now being way, way down, and imagine that this is actually a gigantic paved multi-canal system. Imagine multiple canals running through here, and we'll talk about that in a minute with the Boyne, how there's a canal that runs right beside it. And I'm thinking that all the rivers, they were just gigantic canals which were separated. And then the water siphoned off into different areas of the cities and the star forts or the stars or whatever these flipping things are called to be used to power the civilization. So at this photo, which is rather important, we're going to bounce into Ireland. And I wanted to demonstrate there and open up with is just how many stars there are all over the world and how anomalous it is that they're all covered in mud and grass and disappeared into the ground. So this one you're looking at, this is a place called Tir Crone, it says it up here. And this is in Ireland. It's on the border of County Meath and County Kildare. And this is just some random farmer's field. And there is a full Starfort, and you can see it's a four-sided. So that's the typical four-sided one that we were seeing. So you can see the size of it. There's a bus, there's a house, you know, the house fits here, you know. This is huge. It's completely buried in mud. So therefore, if this is completely buried in mud, you're also saying, well, the surrounding land is also completely buried in mud. If there's a gigantic star fort sitting here, or gigantic star battery, star masonry, whatever we're calling them, they're not forts. You know, then the rest of the surrounding land is also covered. Okay? So bearing that in mind, we're going to have a look at the Boyne Valley, where the majority of the tales of ancient Ireland took place. The Boyne Valley is where the High Kings of Ireland sat. You might know about Tara, you might not. But Tara was the place of kingship of Ireland in the tales of Irish mythology. And that is the area of the land we're going to look at today. Before we go there, this is a little map of some of the Starforts. I think it's from starforts.org. The lady who does New Earth, she created this, I think, several years ago. There's even more research now on Starforts. There's even more Starforts in this. This is just the tip of the iceberg. So, Tír Crone. What about Tír Crone? So, we're in Ireland. This is Dublin. It's Kildare. This is Tír Crone. This is where the Starfort is, alright? Okay? This is random Irish countryside. There's small towns, Kinnegad, tiny little town. Barely a town, barely a town. So we're going to go down here. And we're going to have a look. You can see field after field. And we're zooming down into Tír Crone. And here we are. And what do you see in the ground? Except the Starfort. Can you see it? So, here you have a gigantic piece of masonry under 6 to 12 feet of mud, if not more, okay? So, this is just randomly in the middle of, it's the middle of Irish countryside, you know? It's just some guy's field. So, what we also need to look at is that all of this is also covered in mud, okay? The whole lot of it, everything. And all of these here, these are all huge walls. All of them are gigantic walls. If you're from Ireland, you'll know these walls. They are the walls that you see everywhere. There's walls running along the road. It runs around fields in odd shapes. These are all huge walls. Each of them, they're about 3 feet wide, like a meter wide, a meter going this way. You know, and then height-wise, you'd assume they go down to the bedrock in the same way as the Starfort and the castles are built on the bedrock. These walls, you'd assume, all go into the bedrock. And there are examples where you can see them going into the bedrock. Many places, just around the corner from where I live, I can see these old walls built directly on the bedrock. So, there's a big Starfort in Tír Crone. So we need to have a look at this area and say to ourselves, well, if there was a big Starfort here and it was the area of the Irish kings, let's have a look and let's see what was going on. So, what you'll notice is that here we've got the River Boyne, close to Tír Crone, and the River Boyne runs, where are we here now? Where's my spots? Saved River Boyne. Let's see, my places. Saved. Favorites. There we go. So, Tír Crone, County Meath. The River Boyne, we're going to have a quick chat about the River Boyne here, because the River Boyne is the main river of this area. Okay, and all of the tales of the River Boyne and the myths and legends of Ireland happen in relation to the River Boyne. So, first of all, River Boyne is a river in Leinster. It's about 112 kilometres. It rises at Trinity Well Newbury Hall near Carbery, County Kildare, and it flows towards the northeast through County Meath to reach the Irish Sea. Salmon and trout can be caught in the river. So the Battle of the Boyne, a major battle in Irish history, took place here. And we're going to have a look at some of these places: Trim, Hill of Tara, Navin, Hill of Slane, Runabonia, Mellifont Abbey, and we'll see Drogheda as well. So there's a lot of history along this river, okay? A lot of history along this river. So where it says the river rises is here. This is Carbery, okay? So you can see here under the ground the river Boyne is flowing. I'll show it here now. It flows under the bog, or just around here. So see the Boyne. So this is where it says that the river Boyne has its source, Carbery, okay? And now we're going to flick into a little bit about the mythology of the area, because what they say is that in the mythology of Ireland, that this area here, the source of the river Boyne, they say that it's the magical well of Segus. Segus? Can't even pronounce that. I'm really fluent in Irish. Also known as Conla's Well, which was surrounded by 9 magic hazel trees. Hazelnuts were known to fall into the well, where they were eaten by the speckled salmon, who, along with hazelnuts, also embody and represent wisdom in Irish mythology. Right? So, this area here, Carbery, mythologically is the source of the river Boyne, and not mythologically. Carbery is the source of the river Boyne currently, Trinity Well. They say that this is the source of it. In mythological times, it was called the Well of Segus, and 9 hazelnut trees grew around it, and the hazelnuts fell into the well, and that whoever ate of the hazelnuts would have excellent knowledge. All right. So, how did the River Boyne get its name? So, the River Boyne is named after an Irish goddess called Boan or Boand, and according to the Lawer Gavála Éireann and Tonbo Frech, she's the sister of Beefend and daughter of Del Bath, son of Elaha of the Tuatha De Danann. So Boan is a Tuatha De Danann goddess, and if you know anything about Irish mythology, the Tuatha De Danann would be what you might consider the fairies or the elf people, and they were the magical people of Ireland, and they were known as the old gods. And Boan was one of these goddesses. She was the wife of, I think, of Noctin, but she had a son with the Dagda called Angus, and in order to hide her affair, the Dagda made the son stand still for 9 months, and Angus was conceived and gestated and born. So the story of the River Boyne centres around this love affair that Boan had with Dagda. So Boan had an affair with Dagda, he seduced her, and they had a child. It's kind of like Zeus seducing Persephone, similar kind of story. But in this, Boan is mad to stay, she wants to stay with Dagda, and that's how the story of the myth develops. So Boan has the child, and what she does is, in one of the Irish tales called the Din Shankas, she went to the magical well of Segus, so Carbery, currently Carbery, which is right here. Carbery. So she went to Carbery and She challenged the power of the well by walking around it, and she muttered incantations. This caused the waters to surge up violently and rush down to the sea, creating the Boyne. In the catastrophe, she was swept along in the rushing waters and lost an arm, a leg, and an eye, and ultimately her life in the flood. The poem equates her with the famous rivers in other countries, including the Severn, Tiber, Jordan, Tigris, and Euphrates. Additionally, it mentions alternate names for various parts of the Boyne, including River of Segis, arm and leg of Nuada's wife, Great Silver Yoke, etc., etc. Uh, Interesting that she's called Nuada's wife. Um, that's an interesting one. So that's the story of how the Boyne came into being. She became the goddess of the Boyne. There's an alternate of the myth where she turned into a salmon in the Boyne, and she was later the salmon of knowledge that was eaten. That's another extension of the myth. Um, in the variant of the same story, she tried to hide her infertility by washing herself in the well. Uh, but when she approaches it, it overcomes her and drowns. And she drowns. So that's the story of the Boyne. I give you a background on the Dagda. So the son, or the father of the son who she was going to have, Dagda is the father king, druid. He's kind of like Odin. He's akin to that god or Zeus. Um, he's a very powerful god. Often described as a large bearded man or giant wearing a hooded cloak. He's got a magic staff or mace, which kills the one end and brings life with the other. He's got a cauldron, which never runs empty, and a magical harp, which can control men's emotions and change the seasons. He's said to dwell in Brunaboyna, Newgrange, which is where we're looking at today. Other places associated with or named after him include Ishnok, Lough Neagh, Grain, and Islach. The Dagda is said to be the husband of the Morrigan and the lover of Bowen. His children include Angus, Bridget, Bab, Derg, Sermet, Aid, and Midir, all of whom have lots of Irish tales spoken about them. His name is meant to mean the good God or the great God, and he's got a couple of other names as well. So this was Dagda, who was the husband of Bowen. So let's see if we're going to, so the Dagda, so we'll go back here again and we will look at this area now. We know the characters. You've got Bowen, who the Boyne is named after, and you've got the Dagda. So all of this area covered in Starforts, but we just can't see them, I reckon. I don't know it for sure, but I reckon it's pretty likely. The source of the Boyne is here, and we're going to pick it up just up here. So we have, we'll have to pull this out again. The old favourites, show favourites. River Boyne source, Carberry Bog. So all these places we're going to pop into. What's going on over here? So here we can see Newgrange. Brunaboyna, this is where the Dagda was said to have lived. So all of this area is covered in mud. And you've got this passage, what they call a passage tomb here. Walls all around the surrounding area, gigantic walls. And the Boyne is flowing this way from Carberry. So we've come from here. So this is where we were. This is where the Boyne has come from. We're down here. So this is where we started, down in Carberry. So we're down here. And we follow the Boyne up over here. So we're going to just drop in. So you've got a bog here that's very interesting. All of these little striations. I have a strong suspicion that I don't know why they're, I don't know, are they just pieces of bog left or not? They probably are. I was thinking that they were kind of walls. But all these sharp shapes, it makes it look like there's something under here. And I think I was looking at one of these areas and there was some star shapes under the ground, just points. You know, you can barely make anything out really, to be honest. So we'll zoom back out again and follow the Boyne up here. So the Boyne is zigzagging in and out, up around here. And then we get up here to this section. And I was quite interested in this area because I thought that once again there was a lot of sharp angles all over the place. And once again, you can't, it's difficult to make any of this out with any certainty. But you follow along the Boyne, and you have to ask the question of how much of this was paved. So all of this area here, like if you imagine this as a canal, which I'm going to show you there now. Let's get this lad over here. So the Boyne navigation is a series of canals running roughly parallel to the main river from Oldbridge near Drogheda to Navin, owned by Antashka and mostly derelict, so they don't even use them. They're restoring the navigation. The canal at Oldbridge runs through the Battle of the Boyne site, was first to be restored. So they openly admit that there's canals that run parallel to the rivers in many places, and this is common in other countries as well. So what I'm saying is that imagine that this river was not necessarily the way it looked before, and that there was definitely a flow of water happening here, but the way it would have looked from above would have been quite different. You'd remove all the mud, and I think you'd reduce the volume of water down, and you'd be looking at some orderly canals. And then along here you've got some mining operations, some quarrying. So there's quite a lot of quarrying goes on along the Boyne, which was what was going on back in the old days as well. So here we are, and we've come to an important point in Brunabona, and this is the area. We've got a big circle here. I don't even know what that is, but it's a perfect circle. We've got a very odd golf club here, golf course with lots of walls running parallel. I love golf. That's actually a Starfort. No way. Did I just find a Starfort? That golf course is a Starfort. Would you believe? I just found a Starfort. County Meath Golf Club is a Starfort. You can see it. It's not perfect, but I can guarantee there's just way too much stars on that there. It just looks too starry. I wonder, does that mean all golf courses are Starforts? Interesting. Well, there we go. So there's a Starfort right in the middle of Brunabona, and as you'll see, you've got, oh no, I thought that we were closer to, oh, we're not. I thought we were closer to Newgrange, but we're not close to Newgrange yet. But that's gas. I can't believe that. That is hilarious. Stars all over this area under the ground. So anyway, it runs to Trim. Trim is probably a star city as well. River Boyne runs along here, powers all of this, powers the cities, runs along, and then it ends up coming out to this area here. And this area is I'll tell you, I don't know why the favourites just don't stay. It's near impossible to navigate this thing. Where's this? What's this called? Where is... I just need to go out further, do I? I just need to have some patience. Ah, yeah, here we go. Up here. There we go. Now we're in the area. So, the Boyne follows up into this area here. So this area is the most famous area of Meath and of Ireland almost, and that's because it's got the Hill of Tara, first of all, which is where the High Kings of Ireland used to sit. It looks very, very unappealing and really not much going on at all in it. There's a church here. This is a church, Protestant church, Church of Ireland, and there's a couple of mounds. There's a mound here, and we'll do the 3D, will we? Just to show. So there's a mound there, and then there's a church here. But there's not really much else going on. But there is admittedly a gigantic subterranean complex underneath, which archaeologists have admitted. So if you look at it, you can see that it slopes down here. So underneath here, there's something huge. They've done ground penetrating radar. You can see this is a gigantic wall, boundary wall. They found posts. So there's something huge under this whole area. But as I said, this whole area is covered in dirt. Piles and piles of it. So that's Tara, which is close to the River Boyne. We'll get back. Impossible to navigate. So here's the Boyne again. What's this place? Volunteer. What's over there? And we've got Asher. Asher, would you look at all those? Now, right, we need to get a better view here. So is that close to Tara? So that's the massive, that's another golf club. Is that a different golf club? That's also probably a Starfort. That's hilarious now if that is. Royal Tara Golf Club. I wonder. You could probably make a star out of anything if you tried hard enough. The Skane River running beside it as well. Interesting, a little tributary river. So I think like the Boyne would have fed all of these little, so it would have come in, fed the Starfort, ran back out, carried on. I have these in here because I thought they looked like good stars, possibly. Just along here then as well. Don't know what I was looking at here. Something beside it, no doubt. So the River Boyne, anyway, continues along. And you can see that also in places, we're going to take a bit of an angled view here. Way nice. And you can see that it slopes down. So here is, where's Tara? Tara? Oh, it'd be great to see Tara. Corvallis. Kilcarnites. All these nutting places. Oh, there's probably something great hidden under the ground. Anyway, you can see that it all slopes down into here. So all these walls end up rolling right down into the Boyne. So imagine that the river was flowing, but it was flowing. There was much more. Imagine it was like a veins, the system of veins just flowing absolutely everywhere through everything, and maybe different channels and canals. Here we are coming into the town of Navin. There's a big quarry there. Navin, used to do a bit of shopping in Navin back in the day. So onwards it goes, and the Boyne carries on through the valley until we get to, we're going to go to Newgrange. Where are the favourites? Hide your list. Once you lose your bearings, it's impossible to get back. So here you've got Newgrange, and this one here. So I'll give you an idea where we're coming from. Navin was over here. Here's Navin, where we just were. Come up here. Gigantic quarry there. Slane Castle, big castle there. Comes around the castle, and then we're into the Boyne Valley, where the Dagda used to live. Newgrange, north. You can see here, right on the Boyne, and very odd shaped mounds, just lots of them, all dotting around the area, all around here as well. Walls just slope straight down into the Boyne. Newgrange then, the most famous one, just down the road. Random mounds all over the place. All this is covered in mud. Everything covered in mud. Boyne runs along. You can see that this slopes down here into there. Circles just randomly in the landscape. This is all just completely covered. Remains of a Neolithic tomb compact Doubt. That's another one. So all under the ground. Lots of stuff under the ground here. And we'll carry on. And this is where the Battle of the Boyne apparently took place. Lots going on here. Nice sharp corners all around the place. No idea what's going on under the ground here. But it comes around the corner. And barrels down into the town of Drogheda, which is bridge town, and flows out into the sea. Bowen heads out into the sea. So to finish off our journey, we've got to have a look at some remaining infrastructure that has not disappeared. So we'll find it there now. We've got this cathedral here. Oh hey, get in. Where's this lad now? In the shop. I didn't even know you could do that. That's gas. Where is it? This is it, isn't it? Ah yeah, click on that there. There we go. Open that up. So this is the main station in Drogheda. So the end point of the Boyne. So was the Boyne flowing? Which way was it flowing? One wonders. Well, we got some lovely pictures of the inside of this place and the outside. Like, it's just wild. Like, what is this? You know, it's a cathedral. Oliver Plunkett's head. There's a guy's head in here. Apparently, this is an Irish myth. I only found that. I only remember that today. But this building is absolutely majestic. Absolutely majestic. That's probably like a play. Probably go to the underground. I'm sure there's crypts. It's probably myths of crypts. We've got a graveyard in there. We've got a bit of an altar. So that's just off the river. So once again, take away 6 to 10 feet from the pavement here. We'll go down. They don't want me to go down. We'll get down. All right, last one. Hey, God, let's get in there now. There we go. That's the one. So this is the cathedral. Massive truck in front of it. Palace. Huge company. So that's the cathedral. So the Cathedral of the Boyne, this is the one. The Cathedral of Bowen. The Cathedral of the Boyne Canals. Also, this obelisk used to be at a bridge somewhere, just sitting there. It used to have a big obelisk, which was also cool. Oh yes, so Bowen, this is a nice end to the tale. So Bowen, she was the daughter of Elaha. Or was she the daughter of Elaha? Or was she the daughter of Elaha's son? Let's see. She was the daughter of Delba, son of Elaha. So Elaha's son. So Elaha was quite a prominent god. And back during the mythological times of Ireland, there was three main races. There was the Tuatha De Danann, there was the Fair Bullock, and there was the Fomorians. The Tuatha De Danann ruled Ireland from Tara. The Fair Bullock lived in Connacht. They were the men of the bag. I think they could have been the original mining guys. And then you had the Fomorians who lived in the sea. And they came and they exacted bounty from the Irish. I think it was a third of the cattle, a third of the women, and a third of the grain, or something like that. So Elaha was a king of the Fomorians, and he was also the father of Bress, who was a leader of the Tuatha De Danann for a while, and he had Bress by Eru, who was the goddess who Ireland was named after. And the story goes that he said that he would name Ireland after her if they could be together. I think it was something like that. Maybe not, don't hold me to it. It's so complicated. So he also had another child called Ogma, who created language, Ogma. Some people equate Ogma to Thoth, the Egyptian god Thoth. And he was grandfather to Manannán mac Lir. So Manannán mac Lir was another massive figure in Irish mythology. And he had the Dagda by an unnamed mother. So Elaha had the Dagda by an unnamed mother, but the Dagda is the father of Bowen. And just to give you a final little bit, Elaha was quoted as being the beautiful Miltonic prince of darkness with golden hair, the son of he was the son of Delblath, although this story says he was the son of Delblath. Sometimes it's the opposite way around. Um, he watched over the Dagda's magic harp. So he's an interesting character. I'll leave you read that yourselves in your own time. It's on Wikipedia anyway. The mother of those chiefs may have been Etna, the mother of Lug, based on Ugma. Great stories though, but very, very difficult to follow. And finally, Manannán mac Lir, who was the grandson of Elaha. These guys were having kids with everyone at the time. There was no such thing as monogamy. It was kids. It was kids coming from all directions. But Manannán mac Lir, son of the sea, a warrior and king of the other world in Irish mythology. So he was, it says here that he's of the Tuatha De Danann. So the Tuatha De Danann and the Fomorians interbred an awful lot. And the Firbolg as well, I think. They were all interbreeding. So these races were all interbreeding. And this is the backdrop for the story of the Battle of the Boyne. And not the Battle of the Boyne, but the land of the Boyne, and that is the land where all of these stories were said to have happened. You know, so along this Boyne, we had the magical well that reared up and swallowed Bowen. I wonder was that part of the flood? Who knows? Anyway, that's all from me. I'm sure I don't even know how long that was, but it was enjoyable, and I hope you got something out of it. Lots of interest in archaeology to be found in your own backyard. So enjoy it. Here's your shoes. Enjoy, and yeah, be good. Think good thoughts.